Okay, now let's go to Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go to my little magnifying glass to the upper right screen area. I'm going to start typing in Illustrator. It's going to come up. I have version 2015.3 on this computer. I'm going to double click into there. It's going to bring it up. Alright, I'm going to make it full screen. It will ask if I want to go into a new project or open an old one, just like with Photoshop. I'm actually going to switch the size, which might have been letter on yours, to tabloid. Okay, so it's 17 inches by 11 inches, so it's going to be wider than it is tall. Alright, I'm just going to keep it untitled -1, that's fine for now. I'm going to click OK. Alright, here we are. Let's look at the interface for Adobe Illustrator. So that's the frame around your project area, right? That is the tools and the panels, the interface, which is basically the look of the software package, right? The look of it on your screen. So here's the interface. We start up here with these menus, the menu bar at the top of the screen. You should recognize this. It looks very similar to other Adobe products, right? So of course the Illustrator menu itself, and you would find the preferences there if you wanted to change any of the preferences, the appearance of things, right? Also in there you see the quit right there. The file menu, okay, where you can export things, you can save as, save a copy, right, even print, okay, edit, object, type, select, effect, view, window, and help. Right? Here we see some buttons, some icons for bridge, if you needed to get something out of bridge and browse there. Go to stock photos. Okay, of course you have to pay for those, but if you need a certain type of image, you could get it from stock photos, Adobe Stock. This is actually arranging documents, so it allows you to arrange it in different configurations, the documents there. Okay, and this is actually the GPU, your graphics card, whatever level of graphics software you have, or graphics card rather, it is fully enabled. You would want to make sure that it is, okay, to get the best graphics performance out of your computer. Here we have a bunch of different tools, and depending on what tool is selected, you will see different content sensitive tools come up here, pull down menus and so forth. So this is the control panel here, and this control panel will change depending on the tool you have selected. So it changes for the type tool. You see now we have things like character and paragraph alignment that come up with the type tool. Going back to selection tool, we see here fill, if you wanted to fill it with a different color. And then this is actually the stroke, meaning the outside line, if there is a stroke on your object, right? Here would be the size, the thickness of the stroke, right? And then this would be the width, if you want it to be variable or uniform, and so forth. All right. Over here you have your selection tools, and then you have your type tools as well as your vector shape tools. Now the tools that have the little triangle, just like with Photoshop, if you hold that down, you see these other tools underneath it, okay, that are related. Notice too we have case sensitive. Notice too we have keyboard shortcuts such as T for type. The selection tool is V, remember. The reason it's not S is because the scale tool, S, the scale tool is actually S. So it's V for the selection tool. Okay, down here we have the rectangular tool, the rectangle tool. It's kind of like your marquee tool back in Photoshop, so it's an M. All right, and there's a bunch of other ones there underneath that. This is a really neat tool, the Shaper tool. Go ahead and click on that, and you're going to see, once we select it, yes, I do want to select it. Once you select it, you might notice that a little tutorial comes up the first time it's being selected. If the little tutorial isn't coming up, you can always go into Help. You can type Shaper, and notice it points out extensions, and it's under Window. Okay, Introduction to Shaper. So if we click on that, it'll go into this really cool tutorial, and then they do transform the objects for you once you start drawing. Really neat. Okay, so go ahead and watch that, and that is in your Illustrator under Window, Extensions, Introduction to Shaper. Okay, if your Illustrator doesn't look like this, remember, you can always reset Essentials to reset the interface just like we did with Photoshop. Eraser tool. And then all these other tools here. Okay, the hand tool you should be familiar with, zoom tool, and so forth. Notice that this area here is called your Artboard. We called it the canvas in Photoshop. It is now the Artboard. Okay, and it's good to know some of these keyboard shortcuts like T for type, V for the selection tool, and now we have P for the pen tool. Okay, and over here you'll notice that you can either have the fill on the front or the stroke in the front. Okay, it kind of looks like foreground, background when you're painting with the mask, when you're painting on the mask in Photoshop, but here you would never work with the fill and the stroke at the same time, usually. So you're choosing one or the other. Underneath that, you can either choose color, gradient, or none for what you're filling it with, right, the color. And then here is draw normal, behind, and inside. This is actually screen modes just like in Photoshop, choosing the different screen modes here. And then over here, notice these refer to different panels. Okay, so again, similar to Photoshop. And then these are tabbed within here, and you can just double click on that to dismiss it, or you can use the arrows. So these should look similar. That should look very familiar. Okay, and that's the Creative Cloud symbol. Here is Artboards. This is referring to the different projects, right? So the different things you have open. Right now we only have this one open, and they'll also be listed here. Layers. And then this will actually open another little tutorial here. Exporting assets. Assets are things that could be swatches, they could be images, they could be fonts. They're really good to have as you become professional. If you're working with Photoshop or if you're working in Illustrator or whatever, you usually want to keep your assets all organized. All right, well, let's go ahead and grab a rectangle now. Right, it's just should be the default, and let's begin making some rectangular shapes in here. Notice as you do this, you're going to see lots of different buttons here, but let me call your attention to one thing that's kind of neat. Hold down Shift, and it will actually constrain it to a square when you hold down Shift and drag. If you hold down Option, it'll go from the center point outward as you drag. That's kind of neat. If you'd hold down Option and Shift, it'll constrain your shape to a square as well as going from the center point. Okay, so make a bunch of squares there, or rectangles. All right, now you can choose a fill color. Right now we just have this one selected, and it says no fill color, but let's go ahead and choose one. I'll choose blue. Okay, but let's say you want all of those to look blue, so we can grab the Select tool, kind of drag a rectangle around all of them in the Select tool, and then choose blue. Okay, I'm going to go back to selecting one of them. Notice these here. Just here, that little symbol that appears, you can actually round the edges of your, and it begins to look really funky, doesn't it? By doing that, right? If I select this one, you can round all of them at once. Okay. You can double click it and it will just do one. Okay, it's trying to assist you by bringing up tool sensitive menus there. Okay, so again, you can do them all at once, or double click on it and it will just do the one. Just kind of neat, rounding those edges there. Okay, you can come along the outside of it as long as it's selected, and you can rotate it. And of course you can resize it. And if you get, and you can delete these, of course, by clicking the delete key. Let's grab some other tools here. The ellipse tool is pretty cool. Okay, you see it's giving you a smart guide telling you when it becomes a perfect circle, or hold down Shift and it will be a perfect circle through the whole movement. Okay, so as you begin to work with stroke, clicking stroke, if you begin to work with stroke, you come up to stroke, not fill, but stroke, and maybe choose a different color. Okay, it might not seem to do anything, but once you begin changing the point size, you will see the difference there. And you might want to play around with the the different options here in the width, the thickness, but also the uniformity of the stroke, almost making it look like it has a shadow there, right? And even just the texture of the stroke. All of these different interesting options you can choose. Okay, you can move it around with the selection tool there. Right now it's just auto selecting it whenever I click on it. Okay, now let's go ahead and do some practice of creating a design for a logo, and in our case particularly a flag, a city flag. Okay, but we're going to practice with some existing city flags first. So let's go to File, New, and we're going to call this Flag Practice Your Last Name. Alright, I'm going to make sure this is inches. Okay, and tabloid is good. I'll click OK. Notice it's tabbed that just right next to the Untitled one we just played in. Alright, now it's a good idea to bring in an image, either a photograph or a sketch maybe you created and then you scanned it, to bring that image into Illustrator as a reference image, and then you can basically deconstruct that image on the artboard here, making basic shapes if it's a complex photograph or complex image, making it into basic shapes for a logo or a flag. And we will do that, but first let's actually bring in an image of an existing city flag by going to File, Place, and I'm actually going to go into my downloads, as you should probably, because hopefully you've downloaded some flags, for instance, Flag of Washington. Okay, and you're going to actually click and drag, that way it'll be smaller than the actual flag image, which is pretty big. It's a higher resolution than we really need it to be. Okay, and this might even be smaller than we want, so I'm going to hold down Shift and even drag it smaller, and maybe make it a little bigger than that. Okay, alright, and there it is. Okay, I'm going to come over here to the Layers icon, click on it, And I'm actually going to double click this and change this to DC flag, the name of it, after double clicking on the layer. And then I'm going to lock it down because we don't want to accidentally move it when we're doing our shapes. Okay, so I'm going to go into the rectangular tool here. Okay, so you might have to hold that down to select it. Maybe yours was an ellipse. Okay, you could also click M. Before we do that though, you may have noticed, we do need to create a practice layer. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to a new layer. So after creating the DC flag layer, we're going to create a new layer, double click on layer 2, and type in practice. DC flag. Okay, and then I'll dismiss that. Okay, now in this layer, I'm going to come to the rectangular tool. Okay, you might be on elliptical or something else. Alright, and then what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to copy this. I'm going to put this directly over top of it. Okay, and that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to then move it with the V, you can click V to get the selection tool. I'm going to move that over to here. I'm then going to click Command C to copy it and Command V to paste. And now I will move that and make that line up using the Smart Guides right where that is. Okay, good. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to come over here to the rectangle tool and I'm going to go down to the star tool, and now I want to mimic these stars. Okay, so you could hold down Shift to constrain that, and Option to go out from the center. Another thing you can do, this is tricky, but you can also hold down Command to make it slightly skinnier. Okay, so once you pull it out, you can actually hold down Command to make it skinnier or fatter, the star, and you will probably have to make it skinnier, and then you can make it smaller. You can use the space bar to move it. Bunson's on my lap here, so that's what you hear right now, that snoring noise. I apologize. He's our dog. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. So I use space bar to slightly shift it around, just like we did with Photoshop when we did marquees. I used Command to make it skinnier, and then I used Shift and Option as well. Okay, to constrain proportions. Okay, I like that. I'm going to now click V, the Move tool. Alright, I'm going to move it to the side to compare. I like that a lot. We're going to add color in a little bit. Okay, now I'm not going to necessarily get it exactly where it is in relation to the actual flag, but I'm going to estimate it. I'm now going to do Command C to copy, then Command V to paste it twice. Alright. And I want them to be within distance of each other. Doesn't look quite right. Yeah, it's pretty good. Do you see how those Smart Guides came up saying that they are equidistant from each other? They're a little bit low. See that? There's a little bit more space in between there. So I'm going to bring them up. I'll do the middle one last. There. And there we go. And to fill this, all we need to do, we can actually select all of them by dragging a rectangle around it. Okay, note I'm still in the selection tool. We can grab the eyedropper. Of course, you can estimate it using the color as well, but instead, I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool, and I'm just going to click on the original flag, and then it applies that color. Okay, not too shabby. Looks pretty close. My stars are a little bit small. How did you do with your flag? Okay, let's try a more complicated flag this time. A little bit more complicated. Let's go into layers. Let's create a new layer. We'll call this one Amsterdam flag. Amsterdam reference. Let's bring in that flag by going to File, Place, and it's probably in your downloads. I'm going to place that, and once again I'm going to drag it. Click and drag. This is more of a squarish flag. Bottom there. Drag it over the side. Okay. So you see it did that. I'm going to go and lock that flag down. I'm going to create a new layer now. Double click on it and call this one Practice Amsterdam. Oops. I'm going to dismiss that. I'm going to move that. You can also use the hand tool to move the artboard there. You might want to zoom in, Command plus to zoom in a little bit. Okay, see this is a little more complicated. Let's first start with the rectangle. Again, you might want to just grab on the actual flag there and then bring it over. Oops, I forgot to click V for the move tool, the selection tool. Okay, it's a slightly different red, isn't it? Let's go down to the eyedropper, click the eyedropper, and with it still selected, our new rectangle, click on the original flag, and you saw it changed. Did you see that? Subtly changed to a new red, the red of the Amsterdam flag. Let's go back to the rectangle. This time we're going to grab this black middle part, or rather duplicate it. Okay, I'm going to click now to the V tool for the selection tool and bring that over here. Once again, grab the eyedropper, and with that middle part selected on my new flag, I'll click it to get that black part. Okay, now's the tricky part. The temptation might be, and maybe you can make this work, is to grab the type tool. And by the way, you might want to select somewhere out here first, and then grab the type tool and to do some X's in there. And then you would have to, of course, grab those X's and make them white. Right, and we're assuming that is a real white, so we will do that. Okay, and then put them on there. All right, and then, okay, we're thinking maybe I could select those X's and then find the closest font, and you could just go use your arrow keys and go down. By the way, it might be a good idea to bring your artboard over a little bit to see how similar they look, but you're noticing that one's not bad actually, especially if there's a lowercase one. It's tricky to get that slant along the edges of the X. So unless you want to modify that and work with that, and that's fine. And the better option, remember you can use your space bar to move this around, right? Or you can just use your mouse if you have the touch sensitivity. The better option might be to go back to your rectangular tool. By the way, I'm going to X out of that. I'll delete that. I'm going to use the rectangle tool and come back here to just go over this. Make kind of like a longish rectangle. Rotate it, right, and just make it line up. You may want to do a different color so you're able to see the difference. Make it line up with the original. You have to get it exactly on there so the arrows appear. Right, it does not look right. It's too fat. I'm going to actually zoom in so I can see a little better and then move this over. You might hear the heavy breathing. That's Bunsen again, our dog. He's lying on my lap. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to Command C, Command V, and then just simply rotate that. I need to be in the Move tool, or rather the Selection tool. Click V to get that. It needs to be rotated slightly more. quite right. Here's when the perfectionist should come out in you. Okay, looks pretty good. Alright, so then you can grab both of those by holding down Shift. I'm going to come out a little bit, Command minus minus, and then I'm going to bring these over to here. Okay, and you can just do Command C to duplicate both of them, Command V and Command V. I duplicated that twice, right? And then I'm just going to bring them over to here. Oops, I did not grab both of those, so hold on Shift to grab the X. Alright. Okay, now obviously we're not going to be submitting one of these designs to the contest, but it is helping you to see how you can use shapes and text, even possibly, to create a flag type of design in Illustrator. Find an additional flag of your own choosing, for instance Denver's flag, or if you want a real challenge, Phoenix's flag. Find one of those or a different flag and try copying it as we did with these other two in Illustrator. Okay, so now let's imagine that you want to experiment with a more complex design, but be careful. If you're creating a flag, you normally don't want to make it too complex. But let's just say I wanted to bring in this Bengal statue. Okay, this picture I have. And I want to make this the flag. I want to make the Bengal flag. So I'm going to actually make that a locked layer. I'm going to come over to layers and I'm going to lock that layer but create a new layer to do the practice on. Okay, dismiss that. And then I'm going to come down to either the pen tool or the curvature tool. So you choose one of those. I'll try the pen tool. And come around the outside of it, clicking as you go. It's not very good edges, some of them, but let's just give it a try. Again, it's going to figure out what you want of it. I'm just going to have to estimate it because I can't see it. Okay, so there are other better ways to go about this, but let's just say, alright, that's actually not as bad as I thought. Okay, I'm going to move it to the select tool. Huh. It's actually not as bad as I thought. And let's imagine now you want to make this into the flag. It's kind of more panthery than Bengali, but that's okay. I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to unlock it so I can now make it smaller. Make sure it's on Shift. Okay, move it over there. And then I'll lock that back. Oops. I'll get rid of that, which I don't want. Okay, let's say you want to make this the flag. Isn't that beautiful? It's kind of strange, but a child could probably draw that, right? So we're going to drag, I want to grab the rectangle tool. Okay, I'm going to put it underneath. Oops, it's on top. I go to right mouse button, arrange, send it back. Okay, and let's imagine that we want to create a flag with this. Maybe add a stroke to that. Right. I don't know. Let's say blue. To bring that way up. Okay. You might want to add a fill to your beautiful design. Nah. Let's say golds. Okay, and maybe though with the stroke on that you don't want a stroke. Or maybe you want to make that also blue. Okay, beautiful. Well, maybe not. All right, and so that could be a flag design, perhaps, or not. But give it a try with those tools and see how you do.